Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Minister Hancock and Chancellor Hughes, bonsoir, mesdames, messieurs. On vous souhaite une chaleureuse bienvenue au Congrès sur les négociations entourant le repatriement de la Constitution. L'ancien Premier ministre René Lévesque a dit en ce qui concernait la conférence de novembre 1981, c'était un moment de conséquences incalculables, a moment of incalculable consequences. Nous souhaitons que cette conférence ne sera pas si incalculable, que nous apprenions davantage ces 2 jours, ce qui s'est passé il y a 30 ans. Nous avons de la chance que tant des participants présents à l'origine de ce processus ont répondu avec enthousiasme à notre invitation à se retrouver à nouveau pour cet événement historique. We are fortunate that so many of the original participants in the Patriation Negotiations process have so enthusiastically agreed to come together again for this historic event. Lois Harder, Professor of Political Science and Associate Dean of Research and Graduate Studies for the Faculty of Arts, and I, Patricia, Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Studies, have co-chaired the conference, which has been a collaborative effort by many people. And in particular, we wish to thank our conference planning committee, whose names can be found at page 5 of your conference program. We would also like to thank our sponsors.
I get the sponsor list. So first of all, to the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, to the Department of Intergovernmental, International and Aboriginal Relations of the Government of Alberta, to the Alberta Law Foundation, the University of Alberta Office of University Relations, Faculties of Arts and Law, and the Departments of Political Science, Sociology, and History and Classics, as well as the Canadian Studies Institute of Campus Saint-Jean, the Trudeau Foundation, and the Institute for Public Administration in Canada, and finally the law firms of Field LLP and Bennett Jones. I would now like to introduce our Master of Ceremonies for this evening, Dr. Peter Meekison. This evening, I gave my colleague and friend Patricia Paradis a card to thank her for all her hard work in putting this conference together. And the card says in part, "Smart guys got us into this." Well, the premier's smart guy who got us into this was Peter Meekison, as well as Howard Leeson, who you will hear more from this evening. So Peter is currently the Chancellor of Royal Roads University, but in previous lives, he has been a political science professor at the University of Alberta. He has been vice president academic at the U of A, and most significantly for our purposes in the next couple of days, he was Deputy Minister of Alberta's Department of Intergovernmental Affairs. Yes, there was no international in it at that time. So with all of that experience, I trust we are in good hands this evening, and I'm going to turn the podium over to Peter Meekison. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to what promises to be a most exciting 3 days, including tonight. I've been asked to MC, and I've been asked to keep it short, and particularly the introductions, so I'll do that. It's one of the few times I've listened to somebody, but I know that the organizing committee has spent a lot of time putting this together, and I would like to ask you to join me in thanking them for all the work they've done bringing this together. It's now my pleasure to invite Ms. Linda Hughes, who is the Chancellor of the University of Alberta, to bring a greeting on behalf of the university. Ms. Hughes was the first woman in Canada to become a publisher of a major Canadian newspaper, the Edmonton Journal. In addition to that, she has served on the boards of the National Newspaper Awards, the Journalism Foundation of Canada, and the Committee to Protect Journalists. But more importantly, she is a real champion of education. Chancellor Hughes.
Thank you very much, Peter. And good evening, everyone. As Chancellor, I really am delighted to welcome you all to this conference. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces and so many distinguished faces here, and to realize that the collective wisdom, experience, and intelligence of this room will be focused on such a critically important analysis of an important event in Canadian history. We aren't marking the anniversary of the patriation of the Constitution, as you know, but rather the negotiations that led to that event, the deal-making, the debates, and the drama that led the way to this uniquely Canadian accomplishment. This conference is an important opportunity to share ideas and perspectives, to look back, and more important, I think, to build perspectives for the future. In the end, I think here you're celebrating democracy with all its warts and frailties and frustrations. And how often we've been reminded in the last 30 years, and particularly in recent times, as we watch new democracies struggle to gain a foothold, how fortunate we really are to live in a country with this quiet and enduring democracy. So I'd like to just thank our hosts, the University of Alberta Centre for Constitutional Studies, for gathering together this national event. The Centre does encourage interaction across disciplines, and this conference, I think, is an important collaboration between the Faculty of Law and the Department of Political Science and the Faculty of Arts. In case you don't know, and probably you do, getting faculties to work together is sometimes more difficult than getting provinces to collaborate, I'm sure. So that in itself is a historic event, perhaps. As a former board member of the Centre for Constitutional Studies, I well remember the Centre's desire to ensure public access to information and public sharing of research. And so I think this is a great example of that what you do in the next few days will be shared with the public. I was also very pleased to learn that the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council has given funding, quite generous funding, and it will allow you to create a documentary of this. It will be a great resource, I think, for all Canadians. I'm also a former board member of SSHRC and happy to see them engage with this kind of information sharing. It concerns me that I'm a former member of both these, and I wonder if my departure from those boards really got this action going. I hate to think that. I'd rather be taking credit. But anyway, it's a wonderful collaboration. As one of Canada's leading post-secondary institutions, the University of Alberta is very proud to bring together particularly politicians and academics to look at this most singular event in our history. So tonight we celebrate rich legacies of the past, and it's an opportunity, I think, to create some new legacies for the future. So please accept my sincere thanks for coming.
The next person I'd like to invite to the podium is the Honourable David Hancock, who is the Minister of Human Services, the Government of Alberta, to bring a greeting on behalf of the Government of Alberta. You won't see it, but he has a pin on his lapel saying, "Children first." But I'd like to add that I had the pleasure of teaching him in my introductory course in Canadian politics in the early 1970s. Professor David Hancock, Minister.
First public admission, I've heard that he's entirely responsible for everything that I've done. It is an honor and a privilege to be here tonight on behalf of our Premier Alison Redford, our Minister of International Intergovernmental and Aboriginal Relations. I think it is. I think we got rid of the affairs a while ago. I hope so. Cal Dallas, and all of my colleagues in government to welcome you to the conference and to say thank you. Say thank you for to the Institute for putting this together, for taking the opportunity to bring history alive again, because this is a very important part of the history of this country. And a lot of Canadians do not have the opportunity to know and understand what happens and how it comes together and why it comes together, and sometimes some of the little idiosyncrasies that make it work. And so I think this is absolutely an exciting opportunity. I just wish I had the opportunity to be here with you for the full conference. As Peter Meekison said, my first federal provincial conference was in Poli Sci 320 when I was the Minister of Transportation for Prince Edward Island. I got a bridge. It wasn't built for another 20 years. But that's the way this works. But I have had the privilege of attending federal provincial conferences and First Ministers' conferences, both with our premiers and on behalf of our premiers. And they are I wouldn't say this out loud, but I would have paid for the opportunity to go. They are exciting moments in time, and this particular set of negotiations, of course, was pivotal to Canadian history. So again, on behalf of the province of Alberta, on behalf of our Premier and our colleagues, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to come together, to revisit, to talk publicly about some of the negotiations that went into the patriation of the Constitution, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, but more importantly, a better understanding for the public of how the federal-provincial relationship works and how federalism in this country works, and sometimes doesn't, and the pieces that go into making that happen. It is a fascinating study. I've had the privilege of being part of some conferences, including the Calgary Declaration, which was, I think, in my second year in government, which was an incredible opportunity for a rookie. Rissia Lenny was supposed to train me up, but she left right away. As soon as she heard I was coming, I think. Either that or she trained me up in a week and let me go, one or the other. But those are fascinating opportunities, and because you're having the conference, because you're here to discuss what went on, and because you're prepared to have it recorded, and I'm excited to see the book coming out, there will be a better understanding, not only for political science classes in the future, but for Canadians about how our federal system works together. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this.
Now I'd like to ask Professor Peter Carver, who is the chair of the Centre for Constitutional Studies, to bring greetings on behalf of the Centre. The Centre, as you know, has been organizing this. It is the host organization. So, Professor Carver, welcome to the podium.
Thank you, Peter. Honorable Minister Hancock, Chancellor Hughes, honored guests, colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen, je suis très heureux et privilégié de vous souhaiter bienvenue au Congrès. Je peux dire sans hésitation, mais avec hésitation, que le Centre, qui est l'organisateur de ce congrès, au Centre, nous sommes très excités à voir tout le monde ici ce soir, et aussi par la liste des présenteurs impressionnés que nous avons dans les 2 jours prochains. Allow me to say a few words about the Center for Constitutional Studies, of which I'm very pleased to be chair. The center was formed in 1987, just a few short years after the events this conference is intended to mark. And around the time the Meech Lake Accord hit the headlines. To say the least, those first 5 to 8 years were a wonderful time to be a center for the study of matters constitutional in Canada. You may remember that during that period, the arcana of constitutional law and politics made for frequent animated living room discussion across this country, and some of those discussions were even sponsored by the Government of Canada. Well, the Centre grew up in that passionate time, but it has stayed around afterwards, dedicated to the purposes for which it was founded, to provide a locus for interdisciplinary study of constitutional issues, bringing together perspectives from the fields of, in particular, law, political science, and history, to bring discussion of those issues to the interested public in Canada and in Alberta, a province that has played an important role in the country's constitutional development and whose people have long shown great interest in those issues. And through our publications, speaker events, and occasional conferences like this one, to bring together some of the best thinkers in Canada and indeed around the world, to add to our understanding of the role of that this Constitution plays, and constitutions generally play, in contemporary societies. To put it more colloquially, and for those of us who are constitutional politics junkies, we just wanted to have fun. Well, under the leadership of a number of individuals, and I'll name just a few, but people such as Professors Gerald Gall and Richard Bauman of the Faculty of Law here, and Alan Tupper and Janine Brody, who will be speaking to us tonight, of the Department of Political Science at the University of Alberta, and longtime Executive Director David Schneiderman, now of the University of Toronto, but whom we are very pleased to welcome back for this weekend. The Centre has prospered, and we have had fun. This conference, we believe, will be one more such experience. Now, I'm about to turn the microphone back to Peter. He does get it back. And shortly then to Howard Leeson. I want to note, as Lois did, that it was Howard and Peter that approached the Centre with the idea of holding an event to mark the 30th anniversary of a week that changed Canadian history. We, to our credit, quickly saw the benefit of accepting this gift horse and how it could be an opportunity for celebration, reflection, criticism, and looking ahead, all mixed together in what we might say is the usual rich Canadian potpourri. And that is what we hope and what we believe you will find the next 2 days to be. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Centre, I want to thank all of our funders and supporters and echo Lois's recognition of them. And in closing, I would, on behalf of the Board of Directors, like to extend our Lois Harder and our Executive Director, Pat Paradis, for the quite amazing work that has gone into making this event happen. Et maintenant, et on finit, comme on dit en français, laissez les bons temps rouler. Merci.